Hi, everybody. I'm so excited that you're joining me today. We're going to have an amazing conversation with my friend MJ Hegar, who's taking on the really big and important challenge of running for U.S. Senate in the amazing state of Texas. She's taking on longtime senior Republican Senator John Cornyn in a race that I think is super important and a major part of our Democratic effort to take back the Senate. She is a candidate and a campaign that I think is really worth investing in. Something that I really admire about MJ is that she has a long and multifaceted commitment to public service. It's part of the reason why she's decided to get into the arena and run in this really big and important way this cycle. That's a commitment to public service that started in part through her long service in the military. Some of you might know that MJ is an incredibly accomplished member of the Air Force community. She flew in active combat, search and rescue in Afghanistan, actually sustained injuries, and some of her bravery in combat roles has gone on to win her a Purple Heart and a Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor, some amazing military accolades. Her commitment to public service goes beyond military service. In fact, it took her on a journey to even push the military to become more inclusive when she became a lead plaintiff in a lawsuit to actually challenge and change the military's Combat Exclusion Policy, which at the time barred women from serving in ground combat roles. As a part of that effort, MJ won, and as a result, more women are allowed to serve our country in active combat roles. And I have to tell you, from what I've seen of MJ, because she was one of our Arena Fellows in 2018, she is a formidable campaigner. In 2018, her campaign to run for Congress in Texas's 31st Congressional District was an amazing race, one that a lot of Democrats didn't see coming because of her amazing ability to organize, to drum up grassroots support. She took on a long-term popular Republican elected official and came closer than anybody before, within just 3 points of beating him in 2018. And so I have conviction that with a little bit of our help and resourcing, she's going to really run a race to remember and will emerge victorious in the Senate contest in Texas. She's going to bring so much of that energy, her ability to organize and use innovative campaign tactics, and her amazing campaign team to bear on this incredibly important Senate race. So I'm thrilled for you to get the chance to know her better, and I think you're also going to agree that this is a race and a candidate that you'll be delighted to support as well. MJ, I was wondering if you could share more about yourself and why you decided to run. I'd love to hear more about your leadership story.
Yeah, I grew up here in Texas. I joined the military. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and didn't really understand what that domestic threat to the Constitution could look like, but knew that, if I saw one rise up, then I would do what I could to defeat it. And I feel like that's what this campaign is. It's an extension of the oath that I took. But also I'm a mom. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I can't stand by and watch while the things that I love about this country and the things that, made me want to serve in uniform growing up are under attack by our own government. So when I did 3 tours in Afghanistan, most people know about that, but they don't know that I spent a lot of time, 5 years, in fact, as an aircraft maintenance officer. I was over 85% of all B-2 stealth bomber maintenance, so I know a lot about funding military technology. I spent 5 years working in healthcare. I spent 2 years working in tech. I have an executive MBA from the University of Texas. And I feel like we have a lot of career politicians and lawyers in office right now, but not a lot of regular working people. I've been a waitress. I've been a bartender. I've worked in a pizza shop. I've worried where I'm going to get my healthcare from. I've worried about taking care of aging parents and whether or not Social Security would be there for them or for me for that matter. And I think that we need to elect more moms, but also more people who have faced the challenges that our legislators have been charged with finding solutions to.
One of the things that I think is so powerful about your candidacy and your story is that you really have a long career in public service, even before you decided to run for office. I was wondering if you could share more with us about what you've done in your time in service in the military or in the process of running that you're most proud of for Texans.
Yeah, I think that people usually expect me to say either the, hundreds of medevac missions and the lives that I've saved, which of course is something I'm really proud of. or the, you know, going to DC as a private citizen with no power, no money, not a donor, not an, you know, somebody who that has a lot of political capital, and taking on Jeff Sessions and taking on the system and winning and opening 238,000 jobs for women in the military by building a bipartisan broad coalition of support from the right and the left. Those are things I'm really proud about, but I would definitely say the thing I'm the most proud of is the people that I've had the opportunity to mentor. It's really exciting to not only mentor, you know, young men and women, but also other candidates, other people who are looking to serve their country either in uniform or in government, maybe as candidates or not. There's a lot of people who don't, you know, want to be the candidate, but they still want to support our country and our Constitution, and they want to fight for, you know, immigration reform or fight climate change. And it's really exciting to be able to partner with people like that and help them, because frankly, all the things that I want to accomplish, I cannot do alone. I have to run a very coordinated campaign. I have to get a lot more people elected. I have to flip the state house, break the Republican supermajority in the state Senate, add a few seats to the House and protect to the U.S. House and protect the ones that we have, and eventually get a better governor elected in Texas, flip the U.S. Senate, obviously, and maybe even push up those 38 electoral votes to our nominee for president. So it's the people that I've been able to work with that I think I'm the most proud of.
It's so important. What I hear and what you just shared was that, you know, not only are you making this huge personal sacrifice and family sacrifice to run for office, but there's such an awareness for you that this is part of also system-wide change and trying to sort of bring others along with you. I think that's something that public service is better served for having you in the arena for.
Yeah, it's purely selfish, frankly. It's completely self-serving. I don't want to win this race and then get there by myself and play in Mitch McConnell's legislative graveyard and not be able to, you know, I mean, imagine how frustrating that would be to do the work and sacrifice to get elected and then get there and not be able to be effective.
Yeah.
I think it's the military leadership in me that just knows that you could be the best pilot in the world, but if you're not on the same page or you're flying with people who are not good at their jobs in the crew. I mean, we used to say that the aircraft doesn't crash in compartments. Like, just because you're doing your job really well, if somebody else is screwing up, then, you know, the mission is at stake. It's one of the things that I really like about seeing so many veterans and so many people in, you know, the intelligence community who understand that you can disagree with people on your team, or you can be part of a team with people that from different countries or different religions, different colors, different sexual orientations, you know, whatever it is. But you come together and you walk out of the room and you execute the mission. And that's something that we're not seeing enough of in government. We're seeing a lot of hyper-partisanship and political football playing and people trying to grab cameras and further their careers and protect their party instead of serving their country. Yeah. So it's definitely something I'm excited to see so many veterans running and serving.
And, you know, in the context specifically of your race, you're running for U.S. Senate in Texas against Texas's senior Republican Senator, John Cornyn. And this is the same John Cornyn who just 2 or 3 weeks ago was tweeting pictures of a Corona beer at a bar in the midst of this huge global pandemic, and one that's costing a lot of Americans their lives. And I was wondering, on this specific issue that's so top of mind for so many of us, what's your take on what's required from elected leaders in Texas or nationally to help keep Americans more safe and healthy?
You know, another aspect of military leadership that I like is that if you're the kind of leader that insists on surrounding yourself with yes men and, you know, doesn't surround themselves with people who and then empower them to challenge you and ask tough questions and bring things up that may challenge your solutions, then you're not going to be effective. And so the thing that I struggle with watching the way that John Cornyn is behaving during this crisis is that I still see a lot of hyper-partisanship, attacking Democrats instead of working together, using flippant language like, oh, this will be a cakewalk with social distancing. Well, that's a good example of why we need more regular people in office, because he doesn't understand. He's projecting onto us that his only concern is that he'll get the virus. Well, our concern is, where are we going to buy toilet paper? How are we going to feed our children? Am I going to lose my job? When I lose my job, am I going to lose my health insurance? Which the answer is yes for the vast majority of Americans. Not for him, though. He's never had to worry about that. So, you know, I guess that I was just recently, I really surprised some people when I said this, but I'm going to say it again. I'm pulling for Cornyn. I'm pulling for him to do a great job. I wish that he would make it very difficult to run against him, because, you know, he's working for working Texans and helping people get access to healthcare. That's nothing I would like more than to have a difficult race against him, because he is really working hard for Texans, but he's not. The reality is that he is still working for his corporate donors. He's still defending the gun lobby. He's still defending private prisons. He's still defending the health insurance industry and fighting against pre-existing condition protections in a time right now when we have, you know, the highest uninsured rate in the country here in Texas. That's something he should be embarrassed by. He should be ashamed of. He should be on the phone every day with our governor saying, what do you need? What can I get you? You know, you guys, have you issued a stay-at-home order yet? Do you need ventilators? Do you need PPE, personal protective equipment, you know, for your healthcare frontline workers? What do we need to do about the record or near record, modern times record, unemployment numbers? How are we going to protect people in Texas? I'm not seeing any of that. I'm seeing a lot of towing the party line, protecting his administration, you know, getting talking points from his party leadership. Those are things that, I guess because I was in the military and was in combat, watching leaders who can't command in a crisis is devastating to me, because frankly, the next 9/11 is right around the corner, or we're experiencing it now, or, you know, in a time when we're attacking our relationships with our allies and gutting the State Department. I mean, what is going to be, we're in the middle of a huge crisis, don't get me wrong, but the next one is also around the corner. And we need to start putting leaders in place who can put our country first instead of put their careers first or their parties first.
Yep. Could you tell us a little bit about the election race that you're facing in 2020, MJ? I think for a lot of our viewers, it'll be a real surprise but important message to understand why Texas is really in play and what the path looks like for you.
I get very excited because I'm a data-driven leader. And so the data is very clear that there's a very clear path to victory here, both because John Cornyn is so vulnerable, but also because Texas is waking up. You know, we've been a very low voter turnout state for so long, and we had double our turnout last cycle. You know, we came very close. Beto did a lot of great work and got a lot of people excited, and we're able to tap into that grassroots energy right now. We have a huge grassroots campaign, which has been sustaining us through this crisis. I mean, obviously, shifting to a social distancing and no large gatherings thing, that's, you know, a really difficult challenge in this, you know, for running for office like this, especially in a huge state like Texas. So we have, you know, donations from over 3/4 of the 254 counties across the state. We've got over 40,000 unique donors. Our average online donation is $22, and 90% of our money comes from under $100. The reason that's important is because it's indicative of the type of grassroots campaign we have going. If you build your campaign just on high dollar donors and corporate PACs, then you can't sustain in a crisis in a time like this when you have to really flex. We have so many digital organizers, just, you know, so many people across the state. We're reaching a lot of people. Now we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that we are also losing that kind of one-on-one contact, the feedback back that I get, where we're very cognizant of when we do like virtual town halls that I get that feedback. I don't just talk at people, but I hear their questions really, and I get an opportunity to turn it back around on them and say, well, those are my ideas for solutions. What are your ideas? Because you asked the question, so clearly you have some ideas, right? And so that's a military leadership thing, is recognizing you're not the smartest person in the room, and that the right answers are going to come from the people that you're talking to. But so Cornyn has one of the lowest approval ratings. He's at a 35. A lot of people feel like Ted Cruz should be more vulnerable, but the truth is that he's strong with independent voters. He's at a 52% approval rating. We won't go into why that is right now, but let's just say that I'm strong with independent voters because independent voters are looking for someone who's not a career politician. They're looking for an outsider and a disruptor. But here's the catch. You can't just be a disruptor. You can't just rail against the system. They're also looking for someone who can be effective. So the fact that I have a history of going to DC, building a bipartisan coalition and a broad coalition of support for something that made our country stronger makes me very strong with independent voters. The fact that I'm a combat veteran, it takes away the cookie cutter attacks on Democrats that are in the backs of people's minds, like this person has a glass jaw and they're you know, soft on national security, or you know, some people say Democrats don't love this country, which is a crazy thing. I don't know why that's even a thing, but you can't levy those attacks on me. Things like, you know, radical extremists. Those things don't really stick to me. So, I think that we're in a great position. We've registered over 2 million voters.
Can you say that one more time? That's a big number.
Yeah, we have registered over 2 million voters since 2016, since the 2016 election. So, I mean, we're really in a great position. Cornyn is not well known. He's not well liked. And he is DC when a lot of people are looking for TX right now.
And what do you anticipate the major issues or messages likely going to be in your race as you head towards the general?
So the current crisis doesn't change this. In fact, it magnifies that the message is healthcare. Given that Texas is, like I said, we have the worst insurance rate, not only the highest number of people without insurance, we're also a very populous state. We also have the highest rate of people who are uninsured. And we have a state government that attacks women's reproductive rights and results in closing down clinics when people in rural areas are already having a hard time getting diagnosed with cancer or, going and seeing specialists and things like that. Texans are really sick of their health, their lifespan, their ability to care for their children being politicized and becoming politics and playing politics. I think I saw a quote from someone on Cornyn's team recently that said something like, if I criticize Cornyn, I'm politicizing, something. And it's so sad to me that they think that life and death issues, that Texans that don't have access to healthcare and that have to wait until it's an emergency and they go to the ER, that's politics. That they view that as politics, it's really disturbing to me. That is not politics. That's me feeling like I'm jumping back in the aircraft and flying on a medevac mission to save the 5 million Texans who don't have health insurance. So health insurance, huge, not just financial access and quality of that, because a lot of people have junk plans that aren't going to cover them when they think that they are going to cover them. But also physical access. And certainly the next thing are things like dysfunctional and corrupt government. And that's things like them fighting against voting by mail, gerrymandering, corporate money in politics. A lot of people really wake up when I point out to them that John Cornyn cashed a check from the gun lobby 2 weeks after the El Paso shooting. And that he legislates in a way that maximizes the gun lobby's profits and lets them sell, for example, among other things, 250,000 weapons south of our border, right? And then while he's waiting for that check from the gun lobby to cash, because he did that, those weapons are being used in 80% of the violence south of our border, which causes a humanitarian crisis, which fills up the private prisons, and then he gets his second check from the private prison industry for maximizing their profits. And that's why corporate money has got to get out. And that's why it was endorsed by End Citizens United. So certainly healthcare and then dysfunction/corruption in government are things that Texans really, on both sides of the aisle, really want to talk about.
So you've mentioned this, a few specifics, but who are some of the major organizations that have come in and endorsed you in your campaign?
We're so proud to have the endorsement of people like, Vote Vets and the DSCC, who basically you really have to meet very high viability standards and show that you can win for them to be able to come in. But values-wise, multiple local unions, Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, because we're so strong on women's reproductive rights, Brady and Giffords, because I'm a mom, but I'm also a responsible gun owner, and I'm very knowledgeable and credible on the low-hanging fruit and the common sense gun safety legislation that we can enact that could save lives now. So, we just have so much support, really support from Texans. Nearly 500,000 Texans voted for me in the primary. That's the endorsement that I value the most and the endorsement that I will continue striving toward.
So you are, I want to give you and your team a compliment, because you're a remarkable campaigner. And I think that's been true in the Senate race, but it was also true in that first race that you ran in 2018, where you came within 3 percentage points of taking on a long-term, very comfortable Republican House member in Texas's 31st, right?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could share with us some of the tools and techniques that your team is creatively taking in the midst of this pandemic and the way that it's forcing you to campaign differently.
Yeah, we ran against a guy who won his last midterm by 32 points, and we lost by 2.9. And we outperformed all of the other statewide candidates in the northern rural half of our district, where where Democrats in Texas have underperformed. Like, we need to start fielding candidates that can connect with rural Texas, right? And that's where I was raised. So, you know, a lot of the techniques that we employed then are very successful now. I do feel like one of my strengths as a leader, going from the military to healthcare to the business community, is that I'm really good at building a strong team and not micromanaging them, but also taking the kind of industry best practices and cutting away the fat and thinking outside the box. A lot of times I think campaigns do one or the other. They either only go the way the road has been trodden and they do the way it's been done before, or they throw the baby out with the bathwater and they do everything new. And I feel like we've done a great job of mixing the two and keeping the best practices. We have a lot of people back from our team last cycle, which is something that I'm really proud of, because as you know, campaigning can be difficult, and campaign environments can sometimes be toxic, and teams sometimes don't get treated well. So the fact that we have so many people back from our last team is something I'm really proud of, that we're kind of like a family. And then we have new people too, obviously, because we've had this very much so scale, and that this is a very different race. So, you know, I mentioned our fundraising kind of groundwork that continues. That we're about to post our strongest quarter yet, in a time when a lot of other campaigns are saying we can't raise money because of COVID. The things that have made us successful in the past continue to make us successful. That doesn't mean that we don't need more help, for sure. We're constantly working to try to match the millions of dollars in resources. We've raised millions too, but we haven't hit the number that John Cornyn is raising, because he's getting a lot of corporate PAC money and millionaires that have a very vested interest in keeping him in power so that he protects their interests. So, you know, the digital boot camp, if people are, if they find a little bit of time on their hands because they're working from home so much and not having to spend as much time getting ready or being on the road, they can go onto the website and click get involved. They can be part of our digital organizing boot camp. They can help us, you know, put town halls together. I mentioned that we were doing that quite a bit, but I just want to reiterate the fact that we are being very intentional about getting that feedback back from people. So Q&A boxes that have questions that pop up, but also kind of after action reports where people can submit their feedback to me and things like that. The thing that I think has made us, there's a lot of things that I think have made us successful, but if I could only pick one, it would be that we hyper-localize everything. So when we're in Sweetwater, we're talking about things very different than, you know, if we're in Lubbock, or Dallas is very different from El Paso. And we just want to really be talking about not like what's in the headlines of the Washington Post, but actually what's in the headlines of their local papers, and actually talking to them about what challenges they're facing in their schools and the small business owners and things like that. So it's tempting, since we're digital, to be like, how many people can we get on? Let's have 2,000 people. And that's just not, we're not going to give into that. We're still going to stay to like 15 to 40 to 60. I think I had 100 people on a bigger event yesterday, but just so that we don't lose that kind of personal touch.
Very localized. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So MJ, we've got tons of people that are interested in the answer to this question. What can folks do to support you? How do they get involved? What kind of help do you and your team need?
So definitely go to the website. That we have a COVID page that has a lot of information, but also a lot of information on how you can, for those of you in Texas who can, you know, support your local communities, things like writing letters to elderly people who are isolated in homes. And while you're there, click on get involved. Definitely sign up for our digital organizing boot camps. Help us reach out to people in this new age of social distancing and no large groups. Donations definitely help. Like I said, we're up against a lot of corporate PAC money. There's a lot of people who feel like if they can't max out, they're just not going to donate. And I would say if everybody who couldn't max out would give us $100, then we would be fully funded. You know, so like I said, our average online donation is $22. So obviously, fundraising is going to be critical. It's a huge state. Cornyn is already trying to paint me as some kind of radical extremist, and if we don't have the resources to be able to answer that, we need to make sure that people actually know the truth of who I am when they walk into the voting booth. And the only way we can do that is by raising enough money to get our message out.
Got it. That's awesome. I noticed the really beautiful piece of artwork that you have behind you. So you're doing all of this while also being a mom to 2 boys and having a family. How are you guys coping with coronavirus and having to spend so much more time at home?
Yeah, well, so my mom is staying with us too because, I'm concerned about her, and that actually helps because now we have, between me and my mom and my husband, we have 3 adults in the household. There's a lot of people that are not that lucky. You've got a lot of single parents that are struggling, so we recognize how lucky we are there. I would say that the thing that we're doing is taking turns, because we have, all 3 of us have so much work to do too, but taking turns, like setting aside playtime. We're still kind of homeschooling, even though the boys are young, that they're in a daycare that is really good. Like Jude is he's in pre-K, he's not even in kindergarten yet, and he's already doing math and reading up to like 4-letter words, which is really a challenge for me because I can't spell things around him anymore. Like I was talking to my husband and I was like, should we give Jude a CUPCAKE? And Jude was like, cupcake, I want a cupcake. I was like, no. So, a lot of homeschooling and making sure that he stays sharp with that stuff. A lot of lightsaber battles. He loves Star Wars. And so I usually lose those, even though he, for some reason, likes to be Kylo Ren, but I'll get into the psychology of that at a later time.
That's funny.
Cooking a lot. I think that's been something I've really been enjoying, is that it's making me realize how much we were eating out, and we are still trying to support like our local restaurants as much as possible. I know that there's a lot of people really hurting, so we do try to place like pickup orders from our local places, but we really enjoyed having a lot more family meals.
That's good, finding the silver lining and the opportunity to make a difference. Awesome.
Yeah.
That was fabulous. Is there anything else you want to share, MJ, that we didn't get a chance to cover?
No, I'm really excited about the opportunity to reach out and meet with more people. I want to thank you, Swati, for everything that you've done and everything you continue to do to help us in this fight. I feel a lot like I used to feel when my unit would be gearing up for a deployment. There's a lot of camaraderie, there's a lot of optimism, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of people like, yes, what we're taking on is very important and it's going to be really challenging, but we got this because we're in it together. And that's how I'm feeling. So thank you for deploying with me.
Awesome. Right on. Okay. We'll be in touch. Take good care.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, team.
Talk to you later. Bye.